And thanks to At Home for joining us this hour. This is a little bit weird, but I need to start with a personal caveat this evening. I actually spent the day homesick. I came into work, I realized I was too sick to be here. I went and saw a doctor, and then on doctor's advice, I went home sick. I then came back in because of tonight's breaking news, particularly because it is NBC News that is breaking part of it. But you can probably tell that I'm not at my best. Just as a human here, I have to tell you I'm a little bit of a mess. I am on meds that make me out of it. I apologize for neither looking nor sounding nor being my best. But, you know, once in a lifetime, this story. When I got the call about this news, I really wanted to come in because I think this is important. Here's the contours, the very basic context of what just happened. This story, as far as I can tell, we're going to confirm this with one of the reporters who broke this story in just a moment. But I think what we just learned tonight actually started on Friday night. On Friday night, the Washington Post broke two important pieces of news. First, they reported that the FBI investigation into the Trump-Russia affair was focusing in on money, on potential financial crimes committed by people close to the president. And, you know, before that was posted in the Times on Friday night, that point was sort of surmisable from some other things we'd seen reported, like, for example, grand jury subpoenas of business records for the Trump National Security Advisor, Mike Flynn. Also, the reported involvement in the investigation of the Treasury's Financial Crimes Unit. So we had some indications that money was becoming central to the FBI's investigation, or at least to some of these investigations. But that Washington Post report on Friday night was the first direct, clear reporting we had that financial crimes are the point, or at least a point of focus for the FBI. So that was one thing the Post broke on Friday night. The other scoop they had on Friday night was the one that made the headline. Russia probe reaches current White House official, according to people familiar with the case. So a person of interest in the Trump-Russia investigation, not just who was a Trump associate or worked in business with Trump or was part of the Trump campaign or is a fired official who used to be in the campaign, but somebody currently working in the White House at a very high level, working as a senior advisor to the president. And in addition to that, the person who is the person of interest for the FBI's investigation and the Trump-Russia probe is described as being someone, quote, close to the president. That is what we had as of Friday night. And now NBC News reports that the person of interest has a name, and that name is Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner, senior White House advisor. He's the president's son-in-law. Unlike any other presidential family member in U.S. history, he has a vast policy portfolio. We've had, a member of the president's family in the cabinet before as attorney general. We've had a member of the president's family working on a specific policy, Hillary Clinton working on health reform for Bill Clinton. We've had a lot of people do specific things for their family member who is a president. But his policy portfolio is everything from Middle East peace to Mexico to China to all trade deals to broadband nationwide to the opioid crisis. I mean, kind of everything you can name has been described as Jared's portfolio. In more ways than one, he is a figure as close to the president and as close to the powers of the presidency as it is possible to be without being Donald Trump himself. So NBC News reports tonight that Jared Kushner is now under scrutiny in the FBI's Trump-Russia probe. This is according to multiple U.S. officials. Those officials telling NBC News tonight that Jared Kushner is a person of interest, which is a term that has no legal meaning, but people use it in the news all the time. And to be clear about what that means, Mr. Kushner is under scrutiny, but that doesn't mean that he is a suspect. From NBC News reports, NBC News' report tonight, quote, investigators believe Jared Kushner has significant information relevant to their inquiry. That does not mean they suspect him of a crime or intend to charge him. The officials said Kushner's in a different category from former Trump aides Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn, who are actually formally considered subjects of the investigation. So Flynn and Manafort are subjects of the investigation. Jared Kushner, they believe, has useful information. Now, NBC reports tonight that it remains unclear, quote, what precisely about Kushner's activities has drawn the FBI's interest. That said, NBC News had this story tonight. The Washington Post also had this story tonight. They also broke this story at basically the same time as NBC did. I could tell you exactly minute to minute who put theirs out first, but I told you I was homesick all day, and at the time these stories broke, I was like this on the couch until my phone rang. So I don't know. But in the Washington, I actually think I hurt myself just doing that. I can tell you, though, in the Washington Post's version of this story tonight, what they broke tonight, they add this, which is specific. Quote, Kushner, who held meetings in December with the Russian ambassador and a banker from Moscow, is being investigated because of the extent and nature of his interactions with the Russians. Now, all right then, if possible financial crimes by people near the president is a focus of the FBI's inquiries, and the extent and nature of Jared Kushner's interactions with the Russians is why the president's son-in-law has become a key person of interest in the investigation. What do we do with those two things? Does that mean necessarily that those two things are linked? Financial crimes and links with the Russians, right? Does that mean that there are financial elements of the way the Russians interacted with the Trump campaign that are suggesting possible cooperation or collusion? Are those two things connected? If you follow the money, does that get you to the question of cooperation or collusion? Is that what we are getting closer to understanding tonight? Now, we have known since last month that when Jared Kushner applied for his security clearance, he failed to disclose on his security clearance application dozens of contacts that he'd had with foreign officials, including meetings with Russian officials. We know that one of the meetings he did not disclose with a Russian official was with the Russian ambassador. But we also know that another one of the meetings he didn't disclose was with a different Russian. And we've talked about this on the show before. It seems like there is renewed focus on this aspect of Jared Kushner's last few months, now that he seems to have risen to the top as a person of interest in the White House. The meeting that he took, not with the Russian ambassador, but with a different Russian official, had to do with a bank called VEB. VEB is basically a Russian state-controlled bank. When I say it's state-controlled, one of the things I mean by that specifically is that Vladimir Putin used to chair the board of supervisors for the bank. Putin is known to direct the activities of VE Bank himself, personally. Putin's position at the head of that bank allowed him to use that bank to finance the Sochi Olympics construction, which of course was crazily over budget, the most expensive Olympics ever. That financing for that construction went through VEB Bank at Putin's direction. VEB also occupies a very interesting corner of the intelligence world. VEB is under sanctions by the United States government because of its links to and its facilitation of the activities of the Russian government. A top executive in VEB's New York office just recently, this year, got out of federal prison in the United States. He'd been serving time in Ohio after being convicted, basically, of serving as an undeclared Russian spy while he was purporting to work for VEB Bank in New York City. The charging documents against that spy showed that his spy ring had been trying to recruit Americans to become Russian agents. One of those targeted Americans was Trump campaign, once upon a time, foreign policy advisor Carter Page. And one of the meetings with a Russian official that presidential son-in-law Jared Kushner did not disclose on his application for a security clearance was his meeting with the head of this bank. And the head of this bank himself has ties to Russian intelligence, and the head of this bank himself was personally tapped for that position running that bank just last year by Vladimir Putin himself. Putin installed this guy at the top of VEB last year. Then this guy, after the election, meets personally with Jared Kushner. So if you were an investigator sifting through curious collisions of proper names in the Russian Trump investigation, you would have Jared Kushner and the Russian ambassador. A lot of people have meetings that they didn't disclose with the Russian ambassador. But you would also have this other thing that other people don't seem to have, which is Jared Kushner and this state-controlled Russian bank that's linked to the Russian intelligence services. If you're an investigator, you've already got, like, string tied between those two tacks. box on your bulletin board. You might also remember that just last week, the Wall Street Journal reported a new piece of information about that bank, about VEB Bank, and its previously unreported ties to the Trump Organization. Wall Street Journal reported just last week that VEB pumped millions of dollars into Trump's business partner in a big Trump-branded Toronto building that has had lots of financial difficulties. So now we have, according to NBC News and the Washington Post, now we have Jared Kushner named as the focus of the FBI investigation inside the White House, not described as a suspect, not necessarily accused of any wrongdoing, but apparently a person of interest to investigators. We also, just moments ago, wait, wrong direction. I told you I'm a little out of it. Just moments ago, we just got this statement from Jared Kushner's lawyer. I want to give it to you verbatim. Statement from Jared Kushner's lawyer. It's very to the point. Quote, Mr. Kushner previously volunteered to share with Congress what he knows about these meetings, meaning the Russian meetings. He will do the same if he is contacted in connection with any other inquiry. I think the last if there is doing a lot of work. The statement from Jared Kushner's lawyer tonight suggesting if he is contacted in connection with any other inquiry, that if, I think, suggests that Mr. Kushner has not yet been contacted by the FBI in the Trump-Russia investigation. One of the unanswered questions we've had is whether anyone in the White House has had an FBI interview since inauguration or even during the transition, other than the now-fired National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. We still don't know the answer to that. We have a hint from Mr. Kushner's lawyer tonight that Jared Kushner has not spoken with the FBI, at least not yet. Joining us now from the Washington Post newsroom is Matt Zapotosky. He covers the Justice Department for the Post. He's one of 4 heavyweight reporter bylines on the Post story tonight about Jared Kushner being a focus for the FBI in the Russia investigation. Mr. Zapotosky, thanks for making time to us. Congratulations on this.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for coming in on what probably should have been a day off.
Yeah, I know. I hope you can't tell from the fact that I said it. Matt, part of the reason I wanted to talk to you is that you were also bylined on the really big story from the Post on Friday night that reported that there was a person of interest in the Trump-Russia investigation who was working as a senior White House advisor. Should we see your story tonight as essentially part 2? Friday, you said there was a person of interest, and now you are naming the person of interest. Do these two things fit together that way?
Yes, definitely. The person that we were referring to last week is Jared Kushner. We have done more reporting to lock down that that person is Jared Kushner. We've also done more reporting to lock down at least one component of what they're interested in, which is these December meetings. You mentioned financial crimes. Financial crimes are a part of this. I think we're one step short of where you want to go, which is that they suspect some financial wrongdoing on Jared Kushner. I, like your reporters, would stop short of saying that he's a suspect in this, but there's definitely a lot of reason to be interested in him.
Great. Let me just be specific on that. I don't want to go anywhere that the facts don't indicate, and I'm just trying to be super clear on that. So you guys have reporting that says financial crimes are of interest, and you guys have reporting that says Jared Kushner is a person of interest in the Trump-Russia investigation, but we don't actually have any information as to whether or not the interest in him is driven by financial crimes or potential financial crimes.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Now, we're not saying it's not, but we're not saying that we're there yet. We're not connecting the financial crimes piece of this directly to Jared Kushner. There are other folks in the investigation who you mentioned, Mike Flynn and Paul Manafort, who maybe are more obvious on that front, though Kushner certainly has been involved in some interactions that would maybe get your feelers up a little bit. But yes, that's exactly right. We're not there yet connecting the financial crimes piece of this to Kushner.
Now, Matt, you also said that you've been able to do more reporting so that you can name him. The Justice Department is not commenting on this at all. Obviously, everybody has been chasing this story as hard as they can. Once you guys said person of interest in the White House, everybody's been trying to figure out who it is. Do you expect that this is the sort of thing where either the FBI or the Justice Department would ever make a public statement about this if he does become a target of the investigation, which I know you're not saying he is now? If he did become a target, would we expect him or his lawyers to be notified of that fact? Is that how this works?
In some investigations, they will send what's called a target letter to people and say, hey, you are the target of this investigation. I'm not sure if that would work, if it would work that way here. And it will all be up now to Bob Mueller, who is a former FBI director, who is the special counsel that's leading this thing now. Historically, he has been pretty tight-lipped about everything. So if Jared Kushner were to become the target of the investigation, I doubt that he would sort of go to Congress or go to the public and say, quick update, you know, Jared Kushner is the target.
Okay. It seems likely that investigators might be interested in those meetings that Kushner held in December with a Russian official, the head of a Russian state-run bank that's close to Putin. If they're interested in his interactions with Russians, we know about that. But you guys are also reporting tonight that the FBI agents have also been looking closely at earlier exchanges between Trump associates and Russians that date back a long while earlier, date back to last spring, to spring 2016. What can you tell us at all? What can you tell us, if anything, about those meetings?
Yeah, so there's one in particular, this April 2016. I can't even call it a meeting, but there's an event at the Mayflower Hotel where Kushner is at, and Sessions is at, and Kislyak is at, and we don't know exactly to what extent, if any, that Kushner and Kislyak interact at this thing. But what we do know is that investigators are interested in this April event. We're not exactly sure why right now, but we think that's important because the broad strokes of this investigation are coordination between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin during the campaign. And April is, you know, before the election. The December meetings are all after the election, and the people who would defend Kushner would say, well, look, he is the president's top foreign policy guy. He's sort of a transition official at that point. He's well within his rights to be having meetings or conversations with foreign dignitaries. Maybe a little weird to be having them with a Russian banker and the Russian ambassador, given what Russia just did in our election. But they would say, look, he's within his rights to do that. The pre-election meeting maybe is of interest because it's, you know, during the campaign. We're not really sure, although we are told that that April meeting is of investigative interest, or that April event, I should say.
Fascinating and super clear. Matt Zapotosky, covering the Justice Department for the Washington Post, bylined on tonight's big Washington Post story about Jared Kushner being a person of interest in this investigation. Matt, congratulations again on this report. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel.
Thanks.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.